welcome back to an episode of the Culture Capture Spotlight podcast. I'm Joe, and I'm on the phone today with producer Billy Hoyle. Billy, thanks again for coming on here.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, again, when we were thinking about the show and guests, you kind of immediately came to mind because I just know about your history and your stories and kind of what you've seen throughout the music industry. So I guess the first thing I wanted to ask is how long have you been making beats? When can you think back to your first beat and your first pack you ever sent out?
Hold on. I think I might have just lost you. Give me just a second.
Oh, shit.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. We can hear you.
I think I just lost you in my headphones. So my first beat was probably around 2010 or so. I started playing trombone when I was in fourth grade. That's when you could start playing band in at least Pittsburgh in a school band and everything. I already had a natural, I gravitated towards music pretty naturally. And I chose trombone just because I thought it was an interesting instrument. I think throughout history or just when I was growing up, we knew or heard names of trumpet players, things of that nature. And there were a lot of people that I was growing up with that wanted to play trumpet. So I just kind of countered it with trombone and got in there. And at sixth grade, I started playing drums. And I played that through middle school and all the way through high school. After I graduated high school, I didn't really know how to transition into continuing to make music. I didn't really want to be in a band because I was really just gravitated towards hip-hop my whole entire life. And I didn't really know how to incorporate what I had already been doing musically into that. So I started blogging and just kind of doing some journalism on music before I realized that I could, download software and get hardware and sort of have my own money where I could make my own beats. And I really think around 2010 is when I really first made my first beat.
So in 2010, how old were you then?
That was late teens for me.
Yeah, okay. And you guys,
that was right out of
people can do the math. It's 2021, so you've been making music for roughly 15-ish years, producing for 10. And that's really cool. And because I know when we were talking, you were telling me about how Pittsburgh has a big kind of jazz scene there, and it's very popular too. And how are you your draw to hip hop? Where do you think that kind of stemmed from? Was it just seeing culture and different stuff growing up, or?
Yeah, it was just my generation's music, when I was a kid, I'm a 90s kid, so I was too young for what many people consider the golden years, really, because I was really just a child. But then early 2000s, that was just the music of our generation,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the natural pull. And then, I was raised by my grandparents. So I had a pretty difficult time at first kind of translating that to them, the importance of it. They just didn't necessarily understand hip hop. Hip hop was really in its infancy stages in a lot of ways, especially in a mass consumption style. They didn't really understand that. And then as music was progressing and I kind of got a little bit more into hip hop and just understanding producers and samples and things of that nature, I was able to identify samples that I had heard from my grandparents in hip hop, and that kind of bridged the gap. For them to kind of accept or understand maybe and see how things were coming full circle for music. And just, they understood a little bit more of why I was identifying to it.
Yeah, how hard was it at first to kind of get your grandparents' support? A lot of days now, kids and coming out of college and in high school, when they're trying to enter their career, it's hard to really get your parents' support if it's not your typical run of the mill. I'm gonna just go get a degree and dip out and hit the work field.
Yeah. No, it was when I was in those like early teen years and everything. I don't, I don't know why I felt so much that I needed like their approval or permission, or that they needed to like or understand the music that I was listening to and drawn to. But as I got older and they saw it wasn't really a phase, it was just kind of something they accepted. Not, they might not have always been like thrilled about it. Like me, I was going to shows pretty young and things like that. And they might not always been thrilled about it, but they kind of saw that it was what I was going to do one way or the other. And kind of in a pacifist way, it was just kind of like, why fight it? I wasn't getting into trouble or anything like that.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, I don't know, I've noticed it with myself, and like the people around me. It's one of those things where it's like, we're just going to keep working, you know what I'm saying? And like, keep getting results. And it's like, I feel like when you probably can say the same thing, when you keep getting results and you start to meet certain people, like, that those like same concerns, like your, guardians or parents have about like entering the music industry, like they kind of go away pretty quickly,
Yeah, 100%. Ultimately, I think my grandparents and really any parent or guardian, they just want you to be happy, healthy, and safe. And I really wasn't showing my grandparents maybe the best examples for them to feel that way about the music. I was like a really big 50 Cent fan, really big Dipset fan, like that mixtape era. And I was trying to sell them like on the wrong music. Like there's no reason, that they should have felt good about the music that I was showing them. In hindsight, it was, a little silly for them to hear a 12-year-old playing them that music and then just be like, yeah, this is fucking tight, like,
I'm just trying to picture like your teenage self with like your grandparents, and it's just like, ooh,
yeah, their concerns were extremely validated,
Yeah.
And as I approached my like teenage years and early 20s, I just had a better understanding of where they were coming from, and that's all part of it, is just meeting people halfway and them seeing, one, that this is very fulfilling, them understanding that this was the music of our generation, because in the early 2000s, when I'm showing it to them, in their mind, like in their bubble of which they live, hip hop had really just started to come out in the last few years. They're like on the radio. In their world, it had just started. So, they're worried about longevity of things. They're worried about, me actually having a career in things, everything like that. All their concerns were super validated. But, just as you mentioned, is you stick with things and, people kind of come around or understand more. And, success is defined by you. And, you could have a really small success that to somebody else isn't anything, but to you, it can mean the world. And, when people start to see that and things of that nature, they become more understanding, or even just, they understand maybe they're not going to change you, and, become more accepting of that.
Yeah. And like, to kind of transition now, like you've been in Pittsburgh, were you born in Pittsburgh, or did you move to Pittsburgh?
No, I'm from Pittsburgh originally.
Yeah. I'm
from the suburbs, probably about like 10 miles out, but my grandparents were born and raised in Pittsburgh. I believe my great grandparents were as well. I know that Pittsburgh was always home to them as far as being born. I think they might have been first generation Americans. So, but Pittsburgh's always been home for my family.
Yeah, and you're there now, and how I was introduced to you, you were the gatekeeper of the Pittsburgh music scene. To tell everybody else, you've had the privilege to work with Mac Miller, Wiz Khalifa, Jams, The Flava Child, Beetle, and dozens more artists across your career. I first want to talk about, before we kind of get into Mac and Wiz and your stories there, I kind of want to get into like Pittsburgh's like, rap, hip hop like scene. And I want you to kind of talk about, Like the one story you were telling me, my living room, about how you were saying you were working with an artist, or there was an artist in Pittsburgh or whatnot, who, like, something about like the Chicago drill, and like, I don't know, you'll probably know what I'm talking about from there.
Mhm. Yeah, so my introduction to like the Pittsburgh scene was when I was in high school. I didn't really know or even think that there were local scenes at that point. Like, we definitely had the internet back then, but as far as like social media, it was pretty limited. Like, I was in high school when MySpace came out. So that was like kind of the first introduction to social media in general, and also how we started finding out that there were local artists. There was a group called the GOV, or the Government, and they were like kind of the premier act in Pittsburgh at the time. A lot of the two of the three members of that are still very active and everything. But yeah, that was like the first introduction that there was even a scene in Pittsburgh. And being that age and seeing that there were people in Pittsburgh making, music, and it was just really, really good music, it spoke to anyone in Pittsburgh as well as outside there. And they're making real moves. They had mixtapes hosted by K-Split. They had features from dudes like Jadakiss and Chic and Styles P and Sean Price and things like that. And it was just really, really cool to see. And then not too long after that, Wiz started popping up a lot. He was like becoming this next premier act out of Pittsburgh. And, at that age, you just really, really gravitated towards that. There was a kid not too much older than us that was coming out of Pittsburgh that was just making really great music that, spoke to us just as like young Pittsburgh kids. And that was really like my introduction to the scene. But where I was living at the time, it just, times were different then. Right now you can go to Guitar Center, buy a mic for maybe $100. And if you have a MacBook, you already have GarageBand on it. The accessibility, and you can YouTube how to do all these things. Mm-hmm. And when I was a teenager, we just didn't really have that. You had to find someone who knew how to do all those things at the time. So it just made it seem like what they were doing was so unachievable to someone like me. And really the way I got involved in the scene personally was just by going to shows and meeting people and understanding that there were stores in Pittsburgh that carried the type of clothing that I was looking for and carried the type of music that I was looking for and things like that. The main store in Pittsburgh for that, like what's always been the mecca of Pittsburgh hip hop, is this store Time Bomb. And it was this, really exclusive clothing boutique. My friends and I started shopping there a lot. When we were young, we didn't have much money. So we were really just going down and buying mixtapes, both local and industry mixtapes. Mm-hmm. Just really bullshitting with the owner. His name's Brick Diggler. And, forming a relationship with him. And, when someone like Jams or you or really anyone, crowns me like this gatekeeper of Pittsburgh hip hop, it's wild to me because that's what Brick always was to us. Mm-hmm. And to take that on, it makes a lot of sense, but you don't want to like give yourself that title. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just getting involved in the scene there, and like Brick was everything. You might be in there and you wouldn't know who was going to walk in. It might be a member of Wu-Tang. He might get a call from 50 Cent and they're discussing business. He was just like this larger than life person. You're like, how is this dude in Pittsburgh tied in with all these people, and just sticking around there, like naturally he eventually hired me on in like 2010, 2011. I was doing photography and I was blogging, and my blog at the time was doing really, really well. What I was doing was mainly covering Pittsburgh hip hop, using my knowledge of music from being in band, playing instruments, and covering Pittsburgh hip hop in a way that not a lot of people were. And then also incorporating maybe more established artists or artists outside of the city to draw attention to the blog as well. So it wasn't only Pittsburgh hip hop and only people from Pittsburgh were checking out the blog, you know? And so Brick and Katie Smokes Hydro, she was the other staff member at Time Bomb. You know, they saw value in bringing me in. They had their own blog. They were always taking photos of their clothing, either for the website or their blog, you know, live action. So they saw like the value in bringing me in. And that's when I really got really submerged in the scene and meeting all these different people that I had looked up to, you know, pretty much my entire life. Both people from Pittsburgh, and, you know, we would often bring in, you know, other acts like Static Selecta. Static would do an in-store like once a year, and we would have them DJ at the after party. You know, DJ Green Lantern as well, Tony Touch. When artists were doing tours in Pittsburgh, they would do the meet and greet at Time Bomb, you know, so just meeting people like that and not just meeting them and seeing these people that are really passionate about their craft, but also just learning how to exist in a space with people like that, you know, because you can't be like just a complete fan, you know, how you might want to, because you're working with them, you're there with them for 8 hours while they're doing this meet and greet, and they need to feel comfortable. And someone like gawking over them or something like that, that doesn't make anyone really comfortable in those situations. Right. You know, so just kind of learning how to, you know, that's really where I learned to become a young man at like 19 and 20 years old, being around these living legends, you know, and it's really overwhelming at first. But, you know, you just eventually find this groove and realize that these are all just regular people. You know, it's just anyone walking in just off the street, and, you know, just also being respectful. But than that, you learn how to just treat people in general, treat people with respect. And, you know, you're there, you're giving those people their flowers, but you're also not just like hovering over them and giving them a million compliments or anything like that. You know, you're just being cool. So
yeah,
that introduction to the scene was crazy because, you know, a year, 2 years before that, I didn't even realize how music was ever going to factor into my life again outside of just being a fan, you know, and you get in like this small inner circle and you meet all these people that you look up to who are doing it. And that's really how I learned how I could make beats and the software to download and things like that. Mm-hmm.
And it just speaks to me where it's like you hear a story like that, you know, and like, you know the accolades you've hit. It's like that's why music is more than just like songs. You know what I mean? Because it's like it's culture, and like, you know, you're getting your chances and like you got your foot in the door through like a hype store, a sneaker store, you know what I mean? And it's like there's so many other people who like get their foot in the door because they got a camera or like they can shoot video or, you know, they just know how to like be cool, you know? And it's like it's just really, really interesting to me where it's like, you know, in this industry you can get your big break, and like so many people get their big break in ways like you wouldn't expect, you know what I mean? And it's not like they had to go like run around the planet without sneakers on or something just like insane to get their opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And the real wild thing with me and like the segue or like the movement within there was just like how organic it was. Like, you know, I was just talking to Brick about local hip hop and about golden era hip hop and what I liked. And, you know, I was a really, really young kid, and a lot of the kids my age weren't listening to what I was talking to him about, you know, and that wasn't strategic. It was just what I was drawn to. And I wasn't in there asking him for a job or, you know, begging him for a job. Like, you know, he got that a lot. People understood what Time Bomb were. So he got a lot of people in there, like hire me, things like that. And, mine was just really organic. And then who I rubbed elbows with there and everything, you know, was also really organic. And, you know, you have to understand, like, a lot of these artists, people gravitate towards them because they have something to offer, you know, and they get a lot of people around them who are only there because they have something to offer, because they want something from them. And with my role in learning those things really early in Time Bomb, you know, I understood that there was a negative part of being around like that. And I understood that, you know, just be around these people, treat them like humans. And I didn't want anything from anyone. I wasn't asking for anything from anyone. And naturally that created friendships and bonds that, you know, eventually led to working with people. You know, I wasn't looking to work with them at first. I was just naturally, you know, being around, being a supporter, being a fan, seeing where I could help out. And through that, when I got better with music, it just made sense. Oh, this is my boy. Now he makes really dope beats. You know, it makes sense to work with him. There's not going to be, you know, tension. This dude isn't somewhere else. He's right here with me. And we already have this friendship. We can work on music. And that's really how certain things with Wiz and Mac played out. I was just a dude from around the way that was cool, that wasn't trying to be like in anyone's pocket or ride anyone's coattails. And naturally that just led to opportunity when I got more into actually creating music and, you know, being in those circles.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, again, it's a nice segue. Like, you know, how did the opportunities? We'll start with Mac. Like, how did that come about? Like, when did you get a call, or did you meet him in person? Like, how did it kind of go? Like the first, you know, days of kind of meeting and then starting to work with Mac.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's kind of all gray because I never looked at it like that. Like, there wasn't, you know, you know, going back to those days, Mac and Beatty were in a duo called The Ill Spoken. They rapped together and they were making moves in the city. And it was, you know, it was a good couple years before like Kids came out and the Beat Bully LP came out. You know, they were moving around, they were in the city, and naturally, like, you just bump into people. You know, Pittsburgh isn't that big of a city. It a lot of people think it's bigger than it really is just because of our sports teams, but it's not that big. And it's like, if you're moving around in those circles and you're going to shows and, you know, you're going to smaller shows, larger shows, you're going to bump into people. You know, you're going to bump into people that you're fans of really, really easily. And just like maybe like 2008, 2009, I started knowing those dudes, and we had mutual friends. We had mutual friends that went to school together, things of that nature. So I just kind of knew those dudes, and you know, they kept pushing. Mac and Beatty both went solo, and you know, it just kind of went from there. But no, there was like no call. I mean, the stuff with Mac wasn't even necessarily like Mac reaching out or anything like that. It was just right place, right time. Hey, we're going to be driving past the college you go to. You know, maybe you want us to pick you up and you can take some photos at the show. Things like that. Like, I never worked with Mac really on a musical level. You know, I was taking photos of him at shows, and I was blogging about him really early. And kind of what happened is, once more blogs started to pick him up and he was getting bigger, you know, he would still show my blog love. And those early Most Dope and Mac fans, you know, some of them just kind of like tied us in being closer than we really were. Mm-hmm. You know, I was a dude that was around. I was more friends with Beatty and friends of Max. You know, me and Mac definitely had a relationship and, you know, I would say a friendship. But it wasn't, you know, sometimes it can get blown out of proportion by people. I was just in the mix. You know, I mean, I was just in the mix. And if you were in the mix, it might have looked like, you know, other things were going on. But I was just really around, bro. You know what I mean? Like, some of the artists that were in Most Dope, you know, his original collective, were some really good friends of mine. And, you know, I didn't try to like use that as leverage to get closer to Mac. I was just existing in the space that I existed. You know, I didn't want anything from anyone. I wasn't trying to be around anyone but my friends. And naturally, you know, you just become friends with people, you know, and opportunities just kind of arise out of that. Like, you know, like I was saying, that this photographer can't make it. Can you come? Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we need an article written on who Most Dope is and the members of it and a little bio about each one. Can you write that for us? Sure. You know, and sometimes I took that on myself. And, you know, I was for my age and where music journalism on an independent level was at the time, I was a pretty good writer. So I could cover certain topics and I could put certain words in there or do press releases for people. And it was all about just me adding value to people and then just like not really looking for anything in return. This is just what I love to do and I love to be a part of it. So, you know, there's no like, I get a lot of like DMs from people a lot who might know me through some connection to Mac, like asking for these secret unreleased Mac songs, Billy Hoyle and Mac songs. I'm just like, bro, you know, like I wish they exist, but they don't. We didn't work on a music level. I have a lot of remixes of Mac tracks that I may or may not put out. You know, I have to like talk to certain friends of mine and Mac to see if there would be like a blessing to put those out and things of that nature. But, you know, I was always really tighter with Beatty out of that. Me and Beatty were closer in age at the time. I mean, well, always, but you know, I met Mac when he was like 16. I was 18 and Beatty was 20. Mm-hmm. So as an 18-year-old, naturally, like I kind of gravitated more towards the 20-year-old than I did someone who was 16.
Yeah.
You know? And what's crazy about that is I'm actually, it's like to the day, the age difference between me and Beatty and me and Mac, because Mac and Beatty were born on the same day, January 19th, just 4 years apart.
Oh, wow.
So I was like right smack dab in the middle. You know, when you're 18, like a 2-year age difference is a lot bigger deal than when you're in your mid or late 20s or anything like that, you know? So I was around Beatty, but you know, we were all just friends. We were all just in the mix. Like everything that happened with Mac was just really organic. So, and it might have just been a little bit close to our nose. Like Mac was way bigger than a lot of us realized until maybe we went to an out of town show with Mac and there was like 150 kids lined up around the block. And all of a sudden you're like, holy fuck, like Mac's like super popping. Like we knew he was popping, but when you really see it, you know, you're just seeing like the internet. But when you see it in real life and, you know, you're like, yeah, I'm just here like taking photos or I'm just here hanging out with my boys. And then you have random kids coming up to you just like dying to get to know you. That's when it really set in. It's like, holy fuck. Why do these people want anything to do with me? Well, I'm not that interesting. And that's really like when it sets in, like how huge Mac is, you know? And that was probably like, I forget what tour was after Kids or anything like that, but that was like that tour. You might pop out of town with them for just one night and you see these kids and just how they're flocking to Mac, and they're not just kids from Pittsburgh, you know. Pittsburgh, the size of the city and just like the general mentality around here, I would say is, I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it, but until you really see it outside of Pittsburgh, you just assume, people just want to assume, they're just doing their thing in Pittsburgh. But like once you see it outside, and you see these shows and packing shows and people just dying to meet you because they know that you hopped out of the bus with with Mac and his people and everything, and you're like, these are just my buddies, you know? That's when it really set in what was going on.
Yeah, and like to kind of further go into it, like what was it like with you, Beatty, and Mac, like, you know, in the bus, like moments before you hop out, like as you're pulling into these venues and you see all these people, like, you know, chomping at the bit for a photo of Mac, with Mac, of you guys, you know, like, and you're young kids, you know, you guys are still in your young 20s and stuff. You probably have never been in that kind of environment before, I take it. And like,
Yeah.
just kind of, bro, like, how is that in terms of like your relationship with him, with Beatty as well, obviously, like how much closer, and like, you know, do you think that made the three of you?
You know, when you're that age, the age that I'm at now, I look back at that and I'm like, oh, we were kids. But when you're living at that, like in that time and place, you know, you're like, oh, we're some grown ass men. So, you know, we didn't really think about us being kids. You know, we thought of ourselves as men, and this is what we were supposed to do. But, you know, when Mac and Beatty went solo, they went solo. So when I would hop in a car with someone, the few times that I did to meet with Mac and them out of state, you know, Beatty wasn't always there. Beatty had his own career. You know, Beatty was on his own tours and doing his own thing at that time. So, you know, most of the time I would be with Beatty out of state or out of city, and he was doing his thing and he was killing it. And then, you know, one weekend I might go chill with Mac and them wherever they were. So there weren't really those moments where it was like the three of us, or, you know, me, Beatty, Mac, Will, Bill, Q, Tree J, or anything like Jimmy, anything like that. It was all kind of just, you know, separate. There was a lot of us. You go to an out-of-town show or something, it might be 20 heads from Pittsburgh are pulling up. So, you know, we might have taken 6 cars or something. And then as it went on and there were tour buses and tour vans and things like that, like there was just a lot of other people around at that time. Like I remember the Blue Slide Park tour, I think it was, we were in Columbus, Ohio. You know, I was tailing along on those couple dates in Ohio when Mac dropped his mixtape, Thank You. I gotta look it up real quick. It was, I forget the exact name of it, but it had some Ninth Wonder, some Premier on there, some DJ Premier, which was really, really crazy. It's called I Love Life, Thank You. It's a mixtape by Mac Miller, but you know, we were on the bus when he pressed enter to upload that. That was in 2011. And, you know, I'm looking around the bus. I'm like a 20-year-old kid, maybe 21, could barely drink. And Casey Veggies is to your left. This other person's here and everything. And you're just like, what the fuck am I doing here? You know what I mean? Like, what am I doing here? This doesn't really make any sense. So, I mean, it just, all that stuff seems like a lifetime ago. And, you know, in that moment, you just kind of started to see where his life was going, what was going on. Like, I remember the Macadelic release party where there's this legendary spot in Pittsburgh called Shadow Lounge. And that was just like, for performance wise, that was the mecca of Pittsburgh hip hop. Like Raekwon and Ghost would roll up. Like whoever was in town, like if you wanted real hip hop, that's where you were going. It was packed out. There were ciphers in the back alley. Boys were really getting it. Like they were that culture, you know, the culture. It wasn't just going to a studio and I have 16 bars and 8-bar hook. Like people were really living that shit in back alleys in Pittsburgh, and somebody would be breakdancing and somebody would be catching wreck on a wall and tagging shit. And boys would be all lit up, you know? And I remember being in there for Mac releasing Macadelic. Like we're all in the basement. And, you know, you just, nowadays you can look back and I remember who was in that basement when he was pressing Upload for Macadelic. And then you remember who was there when he was pressing Upload for this I Love Life, Thank You. And, you know, Mac didn't change. The people around him didn't change. It was just, you know, his life was was different, so a lot of that stuff is like kind of blurry. We weren't taking as many mental snapshots. I was probably like super hammered. So there's definitely pictures from those days and things like that out and around. I don't have most of them. I'm sure somebody does, but a lot of the reconnection and stuff happened in maybe like 2014. Me and BB would be at the studio. We'd be at ID Labs working with, maybe Big Germ or J Card, and Mac and Frige and Q and Will would be in room B working with E-Dan, or might be working with Big Germ if we were working with J Card. And you pop out of the studio and you run into whomever and be like, oh shit, I didn't know you guys were in here. What are you getting to after? Oh, we're going to William Penn Tavern, pull up. And then next thing you know, we'd be at this bar and there'd be just 20 of our friends hanging out and drinking. And like, I don't know, you didn't think about it as anything other than a bunch of your friends getting together and hanging out. Yeah. That could sound like head ass to people, but that's what it was. You've known these people forever at that point. Like, 5-6 years seems like a lifetime when you're 19 years old, 20 years old. You've just known these people, so you don't always view it the same way. People sometimes ask me that question, what was it like? And can be a little disappointed by the answer because it's just what it was. Like, and those were just dudes you knew from around the way. You all hung out, and that's just their career at the time was just,
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from, like 100%, and I get what you're saying too. But it's the truth,
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Was it like that with Wiz too, or like how did you kind of get in line with Wiz? I mean, like you were saying earlier, it is a small city, so was it similar in terms of just like right place, right time, or nah?
Yeah, I mean, more or less. Wiz is a few years older than me, and dude, like honestly, most answers to those type of questions with anyone, Time Bomb's always going to be like the epicenter of that. Mm-hmm. Like in Pittsburgh, like before you could really blow up off of just social media and you need to be established in your local scene, you had to be like stamped by Brick at Time Bomb. So, if you were a rapper in Pittsburgh and you knew anything or were making any moves, you were coming to us at Time Bomb. I wasn't there when Wiz first started doing that because I was too young. But just naturally working there and just being around, like, Wiz would just come into shop, or, the dudes from Taylor Gang would come in and just kick it with Brick and just chop game with me and Brick and Katie and stuff like that. But the actual stuff I did for Wiz, I didn't really like necessarily work with him. He was doing the day-to-day videos at the time, and I was doing the music for that. That just came from being around, bro, and people knowing that I made beats. And rather than them reaching out to someone or getting random beats, they'd be like, well, let's get some beats off, these dudes that we know from Pittsburgh who make music, make good music. Like maybe they looked at us as like the premier producers, but that's what they wanted to put in the day-to-day videos. So their videographers would hit up me to get a pack of beats to see what would fit in that day-to-day vlog video. And dudes like Christo's the producer for the dude JID, and like Earth Gang, his beats would be in there. And then another friend of mine, Ricky P, who's a Taylor Gang producer and artist. We were like 3 dudes at the time that they were getting beats off for these day-to-day videos. And that just came from, I don't even know if Wiz knew at the time who everybody was getting the beats off of. I know he heard them and everything like that afterwards. But, when you're as big as Wiz is, decisions like that are always, you're delegating that responsibility to someone else. He's probably just saying to whomever, just, hey, who's dope in Pittsburgh? Hit them up for a pack of beats, and then whatever. And from that, you know, Ricky went on to work with Chevy and Wiz and everything like that. Christo went on to work with some other artists in Pittsburgh, such as Hardo, and then ultimately he landed with Jid, which they make fucking incredible music together. That dude's Christo and Ricky P are both absolutely amazing producers and artists. And, you know, that's kind of how the Wiz thing came together. It wasn't Wiz hitting me up. It was just, you know, I was in this, not to sound, again, like head ass, but I was in this inner circle of people, you know, and being in that inner circle, opportunities just arise. So, you know, someone reached out to me and was like, hey, Wiz is doing a new season of the Day-to-Day videos. You know, we'd love it if you could send a pack of beats in. And I sent a pack of beats in and just hoped for the best. And then just watched every episode from there like I would have been doing anyways. And then I'm like, oh, shit, that I made that beat. That's just how that came together, you know?
Yeah, right on. I wanted to let you talk about some recent music that you've been able to put out. Obviously, you're just talking about Beatty. And I didn't realize you've known Beatty for like as long as you had. You helped him put out the album Beat Bully Hoyle. So when did it drop, first of all?
That was March, I believe, 18th of this year, of 2021. Yeah, that was like our collaborative album, you know, like how Madlib would have like half the rapper's name, half his name, or J-Lib with J Dilla. That's just what we did with our album. So we called it the Beat Bully Hoyle, because, like, actually, oddly enough, 10 years ago, Beatty put out his debut solo project, The Beat Bully. That was always, like, Beatty's nickname and persona was the Beat Bully, because, you know, he had this aggressive, in-your-face, grown man rap style. So he was the Beat Bully. And then, you know, when we started working on that album, he just happened to say on one of the tracks, like, Beat Bully Hoyle, and it just stuck. You know, that stuck for that. But, yeah, that dropped in, I believe, March 18th of this year, 2021.
Cool. And how has your rollout been? Like, how was making the album? Like, how long did it take to kind of put that project together? When it started, you know?
Yeah. The rollout was incredible, man. Like, I've gotten compliments on the music itself, obviously, and we've gotten a lot of compliments on just how we rolled it out. You know, we collabed with a really big clothing brand from Pittsburgh, Daily Bread, on a shirt. We had some other merch, and I hooked us up with we linked up with, a hot sauce company to have our own hot sauce, the Beat Bully Hoyle Mango Habanero hot sauce. So that was, you know, that alone, like, drew a lot of eyes.
Wait, hold on, a hot sauce?
Yeah, we put out a hot sauce. I have to send you one. I meant to bring some when I was in Chicago, and they're just at Beatty's house. I don't have any more at my crib, so I just forgot that. But I do got to send you, Kendall, and Tinley some, and whomever else. Yeah. But yeah, we put out a hot sauce with it. You know, we were just moving pretty different to how some people were moving at the time, and the reception's been great, bro. Like, that came out, you know, about 2 months ago now, and it's still growing every day. Like, I still get multiple new people every day hitting me up about it, new people finding it. It's had, like, a really, really amazing organic reach, you know? But as far as, like, when we started on that, you know, Beatty at one point had kind of stepped away from music for a little bit, like a couple of years. His solo career was going really, really well, and then, like, a few certain things happened, and at the time, the best thing for him to do was just to step away from music and your music is an extension of you. Like, this art is just an extension of you. And if who you are presently, if it just for one reason or another, you're in a space mentally that you don't want to be in. You just got to get who you are right. Find that again before you can get into music. So BD kind of stepped away from music a little indefinitely. I didn't really know if he was going to get back. That's one of my best friends in the world. So even during that 3-year period where he wasn't necessarily putting out music, him and I were still hanging out a lot, and we're still very tight. And I just got to a point with making beats where I was, me and BD had made beats together for years, and I would be on tour with him, and we would be doing our thing, but, my beats really weren't good enough for BD, just to be completely honest at the point. Like, he was working with dudes like Static Selecta and stuff like that, and I definitely wasn't on the level musically to keep up with that. He had a lot of producers around him who were way better than me. But around January 2019, I was playing him beats again, and he was kind of getting the itch to come back. And, lo and behold, that's really when we started working on the album, even though we weren't necessarily aware of it at the time. And, over those 2 years, we didn't just make Beat Bully Hoyle. There's a lot, so much unreleased music from that time that, we might put on other projects. We might, reevaluate things like that. So it wasn't two years to make an album. It was just 2 years of making music, and then within that music, finding an album. And it probably would have came out about a year ago, but then the pandemic happened, and we just couldn't really finish it. We had the album honestly pretty much finished, but we couldn't physically get into the studio with our engineer to put the polishing, the final touches on it.
Right. I want to talk about Jams. Obviously, recently, Jams went out to Pittsburgh and worked on his project Made with Love with you, and you recently were in Chicago to kind of start the rollout for it. Down Bad, Lemon Tree, dropped recently, and just kind of talk about working with Jams, bro, and where you see him going, and also just his music, how it is just totally not what you're kind of seeing from artists right now, at all, and just go into some detail about where you can kind of see Jams ending up,
For sure. Yeah, I mean, dude, to go back to actually how I know Jams is just to kind of talk about how everything comes full fucking circle. And when things start falling into place, it's hard to just not believe in yourself and what's going on. Because the way I know Jams is from my blog. When my blog started getting a pretty big reach, dudes, who outside of Pittsburgh and things like that started reaching out to me for posting, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. Once you start making a name for yourself, just more people start to come around. They see the value in what you're doing. They want to be a part of it. And Jams was one of the first artists that I remember reaching out to me for editorials and things like that, who had his shit together. You know what I mean? I had a lot of people hitting me up who, regardless of their music, their approach was just a little bit off. They weren't there yet. This is all just a learning experience. And those people were just a little bit behind Jams at the time. And then we developed a friendship out of that. We would communicate often. And then the one day, I don't know how it came about, but Jams must have sent me something to post, and he included his age. And I was blown away because he was only 18, and he was sending me these extremely professional, he was sending me professional emails, professional music, and professional videos. And, you know, I was blogging a lot of people that I didn't know personally. And Jams was one of those people that I was blogging that I felt like I knew personally, even though we had never met in person. But we had like a friendship that was like next level compared to a lot of people that were sending me things. And, you know, at a certain point, I stepped away from the blog stuff and was just full-time focusing on beats. And Jams, you know, was just continuing to push on and things like that. And we just kind of fell out of touch. You know, we just fell out of touch. It was kind of the times we were living in. You know, Jams I'm sure you and Jams have talked about it, but he didn't necessarily like where music was at the time, where hip-hop was, and he was kind of refining himself. And him and I were both just kind of going through transitional periods at the same time and just kind of fell out of contact for a few years.
Right.
Then about like a year and a half, 2 years ago, we bumped into each other just on Instagram, and just started like connecting again. Just like, yo, it's amazing to see that you're still doing this. Like, you're killing it. It's great to see that you're still progressing. And, you know, when I originally knew Jams, I don't even think he knew I made beats. So for him to like bump in me a few years later, and I have a few albums out and I'm working with people, and it was just like, again, like this really organic, natural thing. We happened to bump into each other, exchange some music that we were working on, and then the one day he hit me up and was like, hey man, like I think we can make some really good music together. I love your sound. I think it's really unique. I think, you know, I have a unique sound. I think we'll go really well together. I would love to come out to Pittsburgh and work with you. And I mean, it just started from there, bro. We just kept emailing music back and forth. We were getting records done. And then like last October 2020, he was like, hey, you know, I wasn't bullshitting. I really want to come out to Pittsburgh and work with you. And he came and he stayed with me for like maybe 4 or 5 days. And we didn't like really make much music, bro. To be honest, like that first trip was just really like us getting to really know each other. You know, we felt like we knew each other, but people can be someone different online or anything like that. And that was really just us looking each other in the eye and being like, yo, like you're a super thorough dude. Like you have this, your mind for this, like your ear for this is what I'm looking for in an artist and vice versa and producer. And so that first trip, you know, we really bonded. It was like a bonding experience. Like leading up to that, I would talk to Jams probably like once a week on the phone for like 4 hours, just because it's really fucking, you know, it's rare to like find someone whose mind's exactly where you are. And like, we had both kind of like elevated our skill and our business mindset and everything right around the same time. And in Pittsburgh, like, you know, I knew a lot of people had gone on to do other things or different directions in their music. And it was really just like me and Beatty were working together all the time, and our mind was in the same place. And then Jams, you know, came in and it was like, holy fuck, I have another person I can talk to about this, who thinks the same way I do, who hears music, other people's music the same way I do, that looks at people's rollouts, that looks at people's videos a certain way, that understand what they're doing on social media. And, you know, we got really, really close through that. And then that first trip was us just like kind of cementing, yeah, we're fucking doing this. Like nothing's going to stop us. Let's take over the world. He went back to Chicago for a few months. And then at the top of the year, January, he came out and stayed with me for 2 months in Pittsburgh. We were in the studio pretty much every day, like 6 to 8 hours a day at ID Labs, just putting in that work, coming back to my crib, planning on taking over the world and how we're going to do this and put this out, and making beats at my crib, and then hitting the studio the next day, like I said, 6 to 8 hours, making those songs. And then, you know, sitting with E. Dan and finishing up that project, you know?
Yeah.
Just like an absolutely amazing experience. Just like being there with someone who's so focused and has their head in the right direction and really, really understands this shit. You know, there's a lot of people that do music that haven't come to the understanding that Jams has come to yet with music. And he's got such an interesting perspective on things. And, like, you know, Jams just, I mean, I know you know, but Jams has just such a amazing energy around him. You know, like, you meet Jams and, like, you know, you want to be around James. You know, like, there's not a lot of people out there like that. Like, that's a really, really special person at that point. And we just clicked, man. You know, he brought out Tinley and Kendall, and, like, I instantly loved those dudes. Those were two other people that, like, man, for as young as you guys are, as young as they are, you know, you as well, but for what you guys are doing, bro, like, it's incredible. When I was your age, like, people weren't doing it like that. Like, you know, people, maybe they were, and I wasn't aware of it, but, like, you guys, you know, Tinley and Kendall, bro, like, their eye for shit, like, what they can do and how well-rounded they are is just, like, you know,
yeah. No, I know what you're saying, bro. Like, Tinley and Kendall.
Just tell Jams that, you know?
Yeah. Tinley and Kendall, bro, like, their age is deceiving. Like, they're veterans at this shit, you know? Like, they've been doing this shit respectively for, like, 6-7 years. You know what I mean?
100%. You can tell, like, immediately.
Yeah.
And with everything that you have going on, again, it's just, like, you hear your guys' age, and you're just like, oh, fuck, man, these boys are getting it. Like, and that, bro, that's just exciting to be around. Yeah. I don't know anyone who does this shit that wouldn't want to be around people like that. That's what you want. You know, you're a reflection of the people you're around, for the most part.
Yeah, man.
And everyone I met through Jams was just good people and just, like, so extremely talented at what they do. Yeah, man, the experience with James, and, like, you know, ultimately the most important thing is our music together, and the music we've put out together. I believe in it so much, and it's done really, really well. It's been really, really well received, you know?
Yeah, bro. The lead singles, like, Down Bad and Lemon Tree, bro, like, they've been kicking ass for Jams, and obviously you too. Yeah. And it's been great to see, like, from the side, because it's just, like, I know, and obviously you know this too, what's coming on, and, like, you know, it's really just kind of like a snippet of, like, what Jams is really rolling out this year. And, like, as much as you're talking about with Jams, like, you know, like, his energy, like, you want to be around him, and it's, like, there's so many people like that, but I think what really, really separates Jams, bro, from, like, a lot of artists is, like, dude, his intelligence with it, you know, like, he just knows, 100%. Like, what an artist needs, rather than just, like, I need fire-ass beats, I need a dope-ass visual, like, nah, I need, like, 5 people, like, on the, like, back a house of it who are, like, behind the curtains of the scene, who people don't know, that can help me get shit done, and, like, help me move here and help me get these connections. And it's just, like, that's a credit to Jams, bro. Like, out of a lot, obviously I've worked with a handful amount of people at this point, you've worked with a ton, and, like, you know, my team, like, I appreciate you throwing flowers to the people I'm around every day, you know, like, it goes a long way. They've been around a lot of people at different levels of this shit too. And we always say it all the time privately. We have never seen a motherfucker work the way he does in terms of, like, knowing all these people and putting the time in, bro. Like, the authentic time in, you know, it's, like, it's really incredible to see, like, what he's going to do. And it's just, like, the doors he'll knock down. Like, when they're knocked down, like, he's going to be going through them so fucking fast, bro. It's going to be really crazy.
Yeah, bro. He has, like, I hate to, like, say it this way, because ultimately, like, you know, I'm first and foremost about the music, but, like, that dude just has, like, a ton of star power. You know, I hate to use that term and throw that term around, but, like, he has it. Like, you know, he understands the music. He makes incredible music. He understands everything that goes around that. Like, your music, you know, as you get more and more involved in things, you realize that the music is a fraction of everything. And he understands that. And like you said, like, he's just such an intelligent dude with it all. You know, he's really a student of the game. He's really, really a student. Like, that was the thing. Like, when we first got together and he was breaking things down the same way I break things down to people. But a lot of times when I break it down to people, they look at me kind of crazy. But when I broke it down to Jams, like, he was like, yeah, exactly. you know, and it's like, that's rare to find. He's such a smart dude with it, man. And like, I learned so much from him.
Yeah. Yeah, I have too, man. And like, I haven't known him for as long as you have, but I'm blessed for the time I've met him for real, because he's been a treat to work with, and like he's really taught me a lot too, and just like damn, like, you know, a lot of different lessons in terms of like how to work with artists, how to make things like, you know, less or more presentable, and like just approachment too. I mean, he's just great, bro, in terms of like, you know, in terms of other people who work with him. It's like, you know, we all have the same experience, bro, of just like absolutely terrific, you know, like time and like enjoyment working with his ass. And not that other people that we've worked with hasn't been enjoyable at all, but it's just like there's something about working with jams where it's just like, damn, bro, like you know, you don't really know the time, you don't notice how time's moving when you're with it. And like, not that you know, that sounds sus as hell maybe to some people, but it's true. It's just like the dude has this type of like or energy around him when you're working, where it's like, damn, bro, this almost doesn't feel like work. It really feels like a homies kicking it session, or like we're just chilling and vibing. And it's like, again, that's a credit to how he handles himself and this scene and with his career, bro, for real.
Absolutely. And like you were saying, it's not a knock to anyone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It absolutely isn't. It's just that's where he is. And a lot of the other artists we work with or around, you know, might get there, but he's really leveled up. You know, he really just gets it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I wanted to ask you about Refresh PDF, dude, and your sneaker knowledge. You know, what are your top 3 Jordan models? Like, not colorways, just like, all right, like I gotta pick 3 Jordan models. Like, these are my stained models. Like, which one are you going for?
4s, 3s, and 1s.
Bro, why is that the most common answer? Like, I like when I ask that question to other sneakerheads, it's not in that particular order, but it's always like, yeah, man, 1s, 3s, and 4s, like, for sure. Like, I don't hear 11s anymore, bro. Like, when I first got into sneakers, like 2010, 2011, everybody, bro, I feel like it was the Space Jams, the Concords, or the Breads. Like, that model was like in the top 3. I feel like it's fallen out of the top 3, bro. I feel like everybody like would grab a 5 almost now, like a Jordan 5 over an 11. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I started getting into sneakers real heavy, real early. I was like 12 years old. There's this forum called Nike Talk, and we got on there, and my favorites really might just be influenced a lot from then. Sneaker culture is so much different, bro. Like, it's really like this whole other beast. Like, it changed probably like 07, 08, when Gentry took over for Tinker Hatfield. But like back in those days, like the early 2000s, when they first started retroing stuff, like you got one retro model a year, you know, like the True Blue 3s, which you were wearing at the show, like that was the first time they had ever been retro and things like that. So like you didn't have as much of a selection as there is now. Like nowadays they're going to retro everything, you know, they're not to say that they're like running things into the ground necessarily or anything like that. But back then it was just, it was just different, man. I don't necessarily.
No, I know what you're saying. Like the nostalgia, the nostalgic factor of like collecting Jordans is gone, bro. I took I was the same way, bro. Like I was huge into Jordans, like that. Like, you know, I was a sports guy, and like, you know, people listening or whatever might know, like I was supposed to go into sports. I was not supposed to go into music, but Jordans is a thing in culture that's everywhere. You know what I mean? And like I was into shoes, bro, so young, and when I was into it, it was about the fact that like, damn, bro, like these shoes came out in 06 and they're fucking hard. You know what I mean? And because they came out in 06, and it's like the fact of putting a sneaker on and the midsole was factory made in 05. You know what I mean? And it's still wearable in 2015. Like there was something about that to me. That's gone. Like you don't see that either in sneakers now. I feel like you just see like, all right, what's hype? Like what's hype wear? Like what are the TikTokers trying to put on their feet? You know what I mean? And it's like that sucks, because I feel like we've gone away from like what was cool with Jordan. You know what I mean? The guy who started Jordans, and like even when the Nike basketball shit, like when that peaked, you know what I mean? Like it was about like what the athletes had and what the athletes were wearing and the samples, and like now it's just like samples is a whole nother market, you know. They were never going to lose their value, but the whole era of like, damn, bro, I had this retro from like 2011, and like, you know, they're not as like hype. Nobody probably even fucking knows the name, but that's gone in sneakers, and it kind of sucks, bro. I feel like, you know, I know you can relate to it because you've been doing sneakers for a long time, but it sucks.
Yeah, I mean, there's good and there's bad to it, you know. It is hard to like necessarily like look at today's current sneaker culture and for me, and look at it with any type of negative light, because things just change, man, you know. And as you get older, you just kind of become more understanding of that, and it makes those previous years like that much more special to you. You know, you kind of just start to roll with the punches and be like, this is what it is now. And it's amazing because so many people are into it. Like when I first started getting into it, it was real niche and counterculture. Like there was only one other kid in my school who understood it. It was my best friend since I was 10 years old, and we got into it together, you know. And you're looked at super crazy for you know, just thinking about sneakers as much as we do, spending times on these forums discussing them, spending the type of money we were spending at the age, and not really just being like, you know, if I want one gift for Christmas or something, I want it to be this, and just accepting that, or saving all your money just for this shoe. It's changed a lot, man. You know, it's way more widely accepted. There's a lot more people into it. And in a lot of ways, that's fucking great, you know? Yeah, I get what you're saying, man. I don't want to sound like a curmudgeon about it, like, you know.
No, yeah. And I mean, I'm sure, like, I don't know, with me, it's just like, I never really have gave a fuck about what other people like and what's hype and what's not. Like, I'm gonna just buy the colorways of shit and the models that I fuck with, you know? But
for sure,
it's definitely interesting to just see how the culture has changed just dramatically. And like, it almost died, bro. Like, I feel like Jordan reselling, like when they were at the point, like in 16, 17, 18, just dropping almost like 2 retros a Saturday, you know, and they were sitting for months. Like, it really looked like, all right, man, Jordan culture is about to die. And it's to their credit, they've kind of rebounded a little bit in terms of making stuff a little more exclusive, not maybe doing a drop every week, doing more women's colorways too, and like they just did the unisex drop with those 3s that like are super fire, and also like using off colors. Like they didn't use like, I don't know, more like, you know, streetwear colors. Like it was very like athlete, like red, blues, and black and grays for the longest, and like now I feel like they're heading in a better direction, but it was scary for a minute.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, I've just seen that cycle a few times. You know what I mean? And it's not to bring in, like, the crypto stuff or anything like that, but you see those dips and those rises and things like that with everything. And, you know, sneakers especially, because it does become something that gets really, really hype and people are into it. And naturally, like, a lot of those people are people that it is a phase for them, and it's just gonna, you know, run its course over 2 or 3 years, and then they're gonna back away from it and things like that. You know, but yeah, that's just kind of like the natural progression of those things, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like the 4s, 3s, and 1s, the real reason for those is like because they're just super wearable to me. You know what I mean? Like, you can wear a 4 with anything. You can wear a 1. You know, they're a little bit more casual in this day and age with how far sneaker technology has gone. But, like, I love 15s, and I used to get shit on for 15s all the time. Like, 17s are some of my favorite, like, sleeper Jordan picks of all time. Like, the 17 lows, white in Carolina. Like, if I see those pop up, I'm grabbing them. Like, I get steals on those. Like, I'll get a pair of, like an 8 out of 10 17 low for like $70.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Because it's just, people were just like, they're people who 10, 15 years ago, whenever they came out, bought them, and maybe they were real into sneakers at the time, and then they just phased out, and eventually they're like, I just got to get rid of these. Yeah. You know, and things like that, like 17s, 18s, even 19s. Like, I bought a pair of 19, like the Southwest 19s, which were like the red colorway, and it's like, bro, I'm probably never gonna wear them. You know what I mean? I just got them for like $80 because it was one of those things. Like, some dude just bought them when they dropped, and you know, not into sneakers anymore, just get rid of them. But like 19s, I feel like are some of the most hated Jordans of all time. But like, I have damn near every OG colorway that dropped in them because they dropped when I was in 7th or 8th grade. And there's like this special connection to me because that's when I you know, maybe first started having the money to buy shoes and things like that. But yeah, I think with the 4s, 3s, and 1s, there's like that nostalgia factor. The 2s get skipped over a lot.
Hell yeah, they do, bro.
I love 2s. I definitely love 2s, but when you put those up to a 1, a 3, or a 4, they're not my favorites out of those 4s. But like, the biggest sneakerhead I know, DJ Battle Monkey, he's this dude from Pittsburgh that like would blow your mind if you step foot in his crib. His favorite Jordan, if I'm not mistaken, is the 2. You know what I mean? Like, there's heads out there who you'll find somebody who's, you know, always going to have like a favorite that you would never think of. Which is like the fucking greatest part of anything, is there's always going to be hive minds around anything, but then you'll find like the super authentic dude that was like, you know, nah, like the 2s are my favorite, nothing can touch the 2. And you're just kind of like, I don't get it. I can't argue with you because like you're like the true OG of this. And you know, a lot of it's just personal attachment to things. Like, the first pair of Jordans I ever bought with my own money were a pair of 4s. The first retros that I ever remember dropping were the True Blue 3s in like 03. And they were like the only only retro to drop. And then the 1s to me at this point are just like, you can rock a pair of 1s with pretty much anything, and like 1s do look good, like distressed. Like, you could beat a pair of 1s and like they look fucking great. You, like, in my opinion, you start beating a pair of 5s and it just looks like you got a beat pair of shoes on, you know? But like, you're right. 1s almost get better with age, just like wine and shit like that, you know?
I think that's the case for 1 to 4s too. Like, if you had to put me on the spot with like my 3 most underrated models, if we're going like 1 to 14, I gotta put the 2s in there. Mm-hmm. I gotta throw the 9s in there, bro. Like the 9s and the 8s. I love the 8s. The 10s are underrated. Like, there's so many. Like, I feel like models just get slept on because it's not like they're not the hype 5 or 6 models. You know what I'm saying?
100%. And like, Bread 11s were my grail pair when I was a kid. First time they retroed those, I believe, was 2001. So it was like the year before I got into them. And they were just like, there were a lot of people grailed. And then like at one point they started retroing those a lot. It seemed like almost every Christmas Breads were dropping again. And the effect kind of wore off of it. And while I love just like the 11 itself, like as a silhouette, and I love the patent leather, and I love everything that goes into it, you know, they just don't really always go with what I'm trying to wear, how I dress necessarily. And I have a lot of pairs of 11s. I have like 3 pairs of Bread 11s. You know, I have multiple pairs of Concords and Space Jams. Not that I don't have the other models too. But it's like, I have them, they redo them, they don't always go, you know, they're not, you know, you can't wear them with everything. And just, yeah, somewhere along the line, they just kind of like, some connection of me to them. Just, you know, I started to get further away from it. But yeah, I mean, 11s were probably my, you know, Bread 11s when I was a kid were like the end all be all of sneaker culture. Like if you were on Nike Talk back then and you were looking in there, that was like, yeah, I mean, it was just, those sneakers are so special. Yeah. They're so special. But yeah, you know.
Yeah, bro. I feel like we only really hear about that now, though, when like the drop comes and like it's December of, you know, the holiday year and their holiday 11's coming out. You know what I mean? I just feel like there's that loss for the 11, bro, in terms of like, like it's not like debated with the 1, because it was debated with the 1. Like that's the thing is like people debated having an 11, a patent leather sneaker over like an all leather 4s or 3s or 1s. Because it was just that iconic and nostalgic and classic. And I just think that's gone now. Like, I don't feel like we see that as much. You know, obviously, motherfuckers just wearing 11s and, like, they're hyped and they have resell. But in terms of, like, hey, what's on people's feet and, like, what's getting flipped more? Man, like 1s, 3s, 4s, even 5s. You know what I mean? I would say right now. Just because of the Raging Bulls that came out. Obviously, the black metallics and, like, you know, Virgil touched 2 off-white colorways of them. So,
yeah.
You know, those are going to be moving, so.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there with, like, all of that. 100%. I couldn't agree more. The collaborations are real crazy to me, too, as, like, a lot of things that come out now, I do get in this mindset where I'm just like, they literally just took, you know, there used to be a million variant or fake websites back in the day that you would accidentally stumble upon, and they'd have 20 colorways of Dub Zeros with SpongeBob on the side, or they'd have these really ridiculous colorways. And at some point it seemed like Jordan started looking at those websites and was like, fuck it, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, you'll see those, like, certain colorways come out now. And, you know, I see it and I'm just like, even, like, bro, even those red Flint 13s, like, bro, I remember those, like, exactly, like, on fake websites in 2005, 2006. And it's just, they come out and they're hard as hell, but sometimes I just can't detach myself from that used to be the front page of, like, a fake sneaker website back in the day. Or, you know, people would buy those and they'd fall apart. Or, like, around here we have the Sneaker Man. People would go down to the Sneaker Man, you know, buy fake Jordans for $50 and shit like that. And those are all the colorways. But yeah, so I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Like I said, the major changeover for me is when Tinker left, and that happened, and then that's when you started to see all the countdown packages came. And that year it was like, you know, the 1 and the 22s came out in the package, the 2s and the 21s, the 3s and the 20s. And then that year, literally every sneaker dropped. Yeah. And they were classic colorways and they were dope, and I grabbed a lot of those. But that was just kind of like, that was a real transitional period for that brand. And, you know, you kind of saw things changing from there.
Yeah, man. Well, I don't really got any other questions. I'm just gonna wrap this up. Can you shout yourself out, tell people where to follow you on social media and where they can listen to your music?
Yeah, man. My name's Billy Hoyle. All my socials are at Billy_Hoyle 412. Hoyle is spelled Hoyle. You can find me on all streaming platforms. Just searching Billy Hoyle, I'll pop up. Same with YouTube. You know, I do a lot of remixes and creative videos that really only exist on YouTube. And, you know, I have a pretty good Bandcamp following. My Bandcamp is just billyhoyle.bandcamp.com.
Cool, man. Well, this was the Culture Capture Spotlight podcast. I'm Joe. I was joined by Billy Hoyle today. And we're out. Thank you guys again for listening, and tune in next week for the second episode.